Luxury SUV buyers value the space, the practicality, performance, style, and innovation, but the smart luxury SUV buyers value more. Vehicles that can go over 200,000 miles, vehicles that aren't particularly unreliable and don't depreciate like they're going out of value and style. That's why I've put together a list of the 2026 most reliable luxury SUVs you can find on the market today. Don't waste your time shopping for the other junk. Let's get into it now. My first one goes, in fact, to an Infiniti QX60. Now, I know. You'd never think I'd ever put an Infiniti Nissan on the list, but yes, because they've switched out that CVT, they've punted that to the corner, and I've said that those are literal trash, but instead they have a 9-speed automatic transmission mated up to a 3.5-liter V6, which I absolutely adore. So finally, the QX60 is a vehicle that it was actually used on a daily basis without worrying about some kind of catastrophic failure. Sure, there's a few issues like infotainment bugs and transmission calibrations and electric gremlins from here and there and just about everywhere. But let's be honest, it's a luxury vehicle. It's going to feel luxurious. And from a styling standpoint, I kind of like the Infinitis, but I've never loved those variable compression engines that you find over in the QX50 or 55, and that's why those would not make my list. The QX60, in fact, though, would, because Consumers Reports ranks it about a 65, which is kind of average, but on top of it, RepairPal says it's ranked one of the top in its particular segment. It will see about a 55% depreciation in 5 years, but that's not uncommon in the luxury car segment. We know that just about every brand in the luxury segments do see very similar type of depreciation, so it also represents a good buy when you wait a couple of years down the road. The beauty is with this great configuration now with the 9-speed torque converter auto and the 3.5-liter V6, they actually easily will run over 200 to 250,000 miles. Take care of some of the oil services and you're good to go. These are actually one of the few gems hidden within that catastrophe and that pile of coal called Nissan. The second one, it's a BMW, the X5, but wait. Not all are the same. Stick away from plug-in hybrids. Definitely stay away from the 5.0 or in anything that has a twin-turbo V8 because you are in for a world of expensive maintenance. And trust me, I've seen that. I've lived that world of expensive maintenance in the BMW world and it hurts. The 40i, the xDrive 40i, which gives you the B58 engine, which is a 3-liter turbocharged inline-6, absolutely bulletproof. So is a ZF 8-speed automatic transmission that is stapled up to. These are actually ranked as one of the very few German vehicles that are reliability safe. Consumers Reports ranks them about a 65 out of 70, and we've seen their lists. BMW's been edging their way up. Compliments of course, the B48, which is the 4-cylinder, and the B58, which you'll find in these vehicles and many other vehicles that have the 4.0 designation. I love the B58. Heat encapsulation, better bottom end, and of course, a lot of enhancements throughout the whole car just means that B58 engine will last for just about as long as you possibly want to drive the vehicle. RepairPal says it gets a ranking of about 3.5 out of 5, which is about average. The depreciation is somewhere in that 55 to 60% gone in 5 years, which again is pretty typical. And the X5s get hit hard, just like the 5 Series BMWs are some of the hardest depreciating vehicles because a lot of people are fearful. But the B58 is still one of those legendary engines. Now, there are a few issues. There's currently a potential lawsuit, allegedly, with the xDrive system. A lot of people now are saying once you put excessive amounts of miles on them, that they're starting to hear juddering and strange noises, and it could lead, in fact, to thousands of dollars, and it seems to always sort of impact just outside of warranty. Outside of that, there's not a huge amount of issues, other than, of course, cooling system leaks, which we talk about that with some of the plug-together fittings, but the beauty is with the heat encapsulation, that means there's less of that high and low temperature swings, which I experienced in my own N54, which didn't have that type of shielding, which sadly the heat actually took a toll. But in the B58, that's not really the problem. You can expect the odd electrical gremlin, that's not uncommon, window regulators, and if you leave it sit long enough, possibly a battery drain. But the other issue is the oil filter housing, which we've heard about all along. You can split in between, possibly mix oil and coolant. That's a bad day. So ultimately, do more frequent oil services. Keep an eye on your coolant levels. It does have a dual tank, but once you take care of that basic maintenance and amp up the frequency of your oil changes, you know the B58 is as long lasting as just about anything out there in the Japanese side. You can easily expect 2 to 250,000 miles if well maintained, which is really all you want to drive it for anyway. That's over 325,000 kilometers. After that, it's a beater service. Anything's considered beater once you're over 300,000, so it doesn't matter at that point. But the B58 is a true legend, and one of those that is actually actually considered to be a fairly safe bet from a reliability standpoint. The third luxury SUV that a lot of the smarter buyers are shopping for, and a lot of us don't even consider these until you really understand fundamentally, and that's the B5 generation of the XC90. These come equipped with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, made it up to a very mild hybrid. Don't go all in with the plug-in hybrid as well as the hybrid and get all of that doubling down with supercharging and turbocharging, and all that technology gets a little busy and a little bit complex. Stick with this B5 version of the new 2026 XC90 and you're good to go. It comes with a great 8-speed automatic transmission that doesn't seem to be particularly problematic. Consumer Reports ranks it between 60 to 65%, which again is slightly above average. Repair Pal says they're about 3.5 out of 5. And that's right in line with, of course, the BMW X5. Depreciation is equally difficult, with 55 to 60% gone up in smoke within the first 5 years. But on top of it, they are expected to run anywhere from 180 to about 240,000 miles, depending on how you're looking after it and taking care of these vehicles. We know 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engines are going to be a little more stressed. If it were my money, I probably wouldn't necessarily buy one of these XCs with the 4-cylinder engine, but a lot of smart buyers look beyond that. They say, you know what, the hybrid, and they drive in moderate conditions and they don't drive it really hard, they do tend to last and they are quite reliable. Now, there have been issues, of course, with the tire pressure monitoring systems and some of the forward pedestrian warning systems. A lot of the ADAS controls and systems on board can be slightly problematic. Infotainment with the Google OS system can be a bit of troublesome, as is the general infotainment as a whole, but air suspension failures are another factor to consider, and it can start adding a little bit extra cost as these vehicles age. But overall, most consumers find these XC90s a beautiful vehicle, and I love the way they drive. I've driven them. They're luscious inside. The interior is actually nicer. Now, compare the interior quality of a late model Volvo and compare it versus a BMW, or even in fact something like an Audi, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. I sure was. A nice collection of fittings and materials and textures means it actually feels quite upscale. Now, the exterior is slightly a little bit understated, a little simpler, and in a lot of cases, that's really all a person wants, is something that stays out of the service shop and makes you feel warm and fuzzy. It's a luxury vehicle after all. But before we move on, check out your swag: hats, toques, t-shirts, hoodies, you name it. I've got a bunch of that. Just check down below, click into my fourth wall page, and you can get your own swag. We were sold out, but we're fully loaded again. Pinned in the comment section as well is my link to the book I wrote about a used car buyer's guide. Definitely want to check that out if you've been shopping for something on the used car market and you don't want to get stung. That being said, let's get into the next car. The fourth one is from an OEM that I never necessarily recommended in the past. You know, Hyundai and Kia have certainly had more than their share of problems, but let's be honest, the Genesis GV80 is just one of those SUVs that absolutely looks spot on. It honestly takes cues from vehicles like the Bentleys and some of the more premium upscale models and vehicle brands, and yet you don't have to spend that kind of dollars, with quilted seats and interior fit and finish that absolutely makes Audis and Mercedes-Benz blush. The fact is, the reliability of a GV8 is absolutely astounding. I can't believe it's gotten this good so quickly, but it's not all like the same. As a matter of fact, the 2.5T is the specific engine you want to get, not the 3.5T if you are concerned about reliability. 3.5, of course, you step up performance, but the 2.5, if you're looking for something that's reliable, like a lot of the smaller, more savvy buyers end up buying the 2.5 because it generally gets a longer life, more reliable, and it's cheaper to maintain. Consumer Reports ranks him about 65, and Repair Pal actually gives him a 4 out of 5 score, which is better than everything just before this that we've talked about. Depreciation does hit them hard, like every other luxury vehicle, at about 55%. So if you like your money, none of these luxury vehicles are necessarily the best way to go. But if you prefer the driving experience, like I do, sometimes you just sort of let some of that slide a little bit. These GV80s can run over 200,000 miles all day long without even batting a lash. Now, there are a few things to think about, like transmission calibrations, again, seem to be a bit of an issue. Glitchy electronics like sunroof, window regulators, as well as infotainment, not uncommon to have some problems there. And suspension wear seems to be a bit of an issue as well, as they are heavier SUVs. Now you start imposing all that weight. And let's be honest, from my experience, what I've seen, Hyundais, Kias, Genesis, a lot of these these vehicles, including even Toyota and Lexus, tend to have lighter weight suspensions. They tend to wear a little bit sooner, and you're likely to be changing brakes a little more often than some of their competition. Outside of that, they're absolutely bulletproof. The fifth one is another Genesis, this time the GV70, and I even like the looks of these even better. Wow, you talk about that front grille, it almost feels like a Bentley. Gorgeous vehicles. Again, I have to go with the 2.5 turbo with the 8-speed automatic transmission. I love the way these drive too. I've driven these and they actually feel a lot better, if I can say this, than the average Audi. Get behind the wheel of an Audi Q5 and then get behind a wheel of one of these, and I think you might be surprised. With depreciation in that 50 to 55% range, it's slightly better than some of the other previous cars and the competitions in the segment. You would expect to get over 200,000 miles on these as well. Consumer Reports says, you know what, they're good for 65 to 70%, which means they're actually better than everything we've seen thus far, making them actually quite reliable. But even more impressive, RepairPal gives it a ranking of 4.5 out of 5. Absolutely shocking, to be quite frank with you. Who would have ever thought? Remember the old Hyundais and the Kias from way back 20 years ago? Literal crap boxes. From what I've seen, they've come leaps and bounds. Now what we're seeing are the likes of Hondas with their 1.5s getting worse, and the Acuras with the 1.5s getting worse, and the Kias and the Hyundais and Genesis getting better, and now we're actually changing and swapping punches. The only problems we kind of see and hear from time to time on these vehicles are infotainment gremlins, some reboots, resets, some electrical problems here and there. I mean, that seems to be the flavor of the day these days. As a matter of fact, almost every vehicle that spends more time going to the shop is due to electrical problems. You know, resets, reboots, a glitch, a weird sound. And it's mostly it's ADAS or some other reliability issue related to some tech or electronic piece. It's not as much of the mechanical issues these days as it is a lot of the technology that's buried under the skin. But the trim parts and pieces have a little fragility built in there too. And people have complained about some trim that either falls off or just doesn't feel well, doesn't wear well. But I'd like to consider myself relatively intelligent, so I'd probably personally skip on the GV70 as great as it is, and I'd probably take on something next in line, like the Acura RDX, which is their great hot little turbocharged 4-cylinder SUV that's made it up to a 10-speed automatic transmission. And there have been the odd transmission problem with some of the Acuras, but generally speaking, they're very reliable. To the point of RepairPal says they're good for like 4.5 out of 5-star rating. Consumers Reports says they're around a 70, putting them top of the heap of this group so far. They will likely last 2 to 250,000 miles, and the depreciation in 5 years is it even Steven at 50%, means it's probably holding a little better value than any of the vehicles we've spoke of thus far. Now, 3 common complaints. Of course, the early recalls related to the fuel pumps, not uncommon, but also infotainment glitches, electronic challenges, and even a little bit of turbo lag. I mean, it's a 4-cylinder engine, fired up, it's running on all fours with a big amount of turbo boost, and if you get on it really hard at low revs, there's a bit of that lag, and you count, and whoa, and then it goes. If you ever experience that and you're not sure what that is, that's not uncommon for a lot of vehicles these days that are turbocharged, and that's a very, very common phenomenon. For me, I've driven turbo cars all my life, from my 930 to N54s. I mean, even our Mercedes-Benz C300 has a slight amount of turbo lag. Any vehicle that's running turbo means that the turbocharger has to take a moment or two to spool up because it's using the exhaust waste gas to get the turbo started. So of course there's that little inherent delay, but it seems to be slightly more pronounced, at least from what I've experienced, and many people have sort of commented and slightly complained. That being said, the RDX is small, handles well, and honestly feels very sporty. I love these vehicles. The next vehicle on the list is even better than the RDX, and it's the MDX. Why? It's bigger, more powerful. You get 3 rows, 3.5 liter V6. Sure, you can get a turbocharged V6 that's 3 liters, but the naturally aspirated 3.5 liter is the engine that I would buy. And of course, it's made it up to the 10-speed auto, which people have complained about from time to time, as well as some of these sensors and gremlins and the ADAS system as well. There have been complaints about discommunication or communication problems where some of the sensors lose their brains or their marbles, and that hasn't been uncommon. But again, it's as I've said, just about every vehicle these days, you can almost chalk up some sort of electrical problem. But a full-size SUV with 0 to 60 in that 6-second range and almost 300 horsepower, what's not to love about it? You can haul everybody in the back seat with knuckleheads, and the chuckleheads can go in the 3rd row. Lots of room for all your buddies. Consumer Reports ranks them between 70 and 75%, clearly one of the top players. RepairPal gives the Acura MDX about a 4 out of 5 star. Absolutely amazing. For a vehicle of this level of complexity and this quality of ride, wow. but it is a Honda product, so it should really not disappoint too much. I love the MDX. Typical lifespan for these is also actually closer to 250,000 miles, and the depreciation after 5 years is actually only closer to 40 to 45%. So you're actually retaining a lot more of your value than you are in some of the other vehicles we've talked about. Hence, this is where some of the smartest buyers start getting into vehicles like the MDX, because they like to keep their money in their pocket. They like to reinvest their money in other places for retirement, for vacations, or just to have a little extra money in the bank. But there are a few issues, like transmission woes, a little bit of hesitation, or you put the foot down and it waits and then it downshifts and goes. That happens a little bit more in the earlier models, but people do complain about that here and there. Electronic bugs like the infotainment, and as I've already mentioned, ADAS systems and some of the sensors seem to glitch out here or there, as well as brake wear. Again, heavier vehicle, 3-row SUV, slightly undersized brakes, and as I've mentioned, a lot of the Hondas, Toyota products, Acuras, Lexus tend to find that they have smaller brakes, weaker suspension parts, and if you drive them casually, then they're fine, but they do tend to eat brakes a little faster on these MDXs. Now the next one, a lot of you are very well aware. I've been touting this SUV for a long time. I have a personal favorite from a performance standpoint. I love the NX450h Plus. But if reliability is your game, some of the smartest, most savvy buyers don't buy that model because it's a plug-in, and that tends to be a little bit more complex, more problems, more glitches, better performance, and you have that free-range driving, which I love, but it's not necessarily the most reliable iteration. The best ones you can get are the 350h, because guess what? It actually comes with that naturally aspirated 2.5-liter four-cylinder that we have in our Camry. No turbos, simple, easy peasy, and reliable, and then they made it up with the hybrid drive and the ECVT, which is also reliable for Lexus and Toyota. Absolutely unstoppable, as well as the NX250, which is a dog. It's a little slow and lurchy, but it gives you the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter four-cylinder. Again, same engine, but no hybrid. So this time you've got a lot less performance, closer to 200 horse. They're both reliable, and they both will return great fuel economy. I love these vehicles. Consumers Reports gives them an 80-plus score. Absolutely unstoppable. Over in Repair Pal land, they say they're around 4.5 out of 5 star. Literally almost flawless. Sure, do your oil service, change the odd set of brakes. You'll get a huge amount, 250 to 300,000 miles on these all day long, and you won't even bat a lash. And because they're so durable and reliable, people get that. They understand, and the reputation hangs on there. Depreciation is only like 35% in 5 years. You only lose a third of the value. It's a very easy vehicle to own. I love the NX models, any one, any generation, any drivetrain. But for maximum reliability, stick with the 350h. Now there are a few little issues, infotainment lags, a little bit of squeaks and rattles, a little odd for Lexus and Toyota, and the all-wheel drive system seems to have, on occasion, some problems with sensors and sensing, and you do get the odd glitch or gremlin. But honestly, the vehicles are so reliable, even if you get one little glitch, that's almost like a special occasion. Let's go party. I love the NX, great size, great performance, great looks. Still based on the Toyota RAV4 platform, but this is a much, much better looking vehicle. If you like luxury, you like SUVs, and you consider yourself a fairly intelligent person, this is probably a vehicle you've been looking at. The next one actually has a long lineage of reliability. This one comes with a caveat because it hasn't been proven yet, and sadly, the GX550 by Lexus is one of those vehicles that if it lasts, if it doesn't have one of those problems with the V35A, then it's good for over 300,000 miles. If it does have a problem, then you're going to be swapping out a long block or replacing an engine because there is an outstanding recall for the brand new GX550, of course, which is an absolutely gorgeous vehicle. I love these vehicles. Far more than the Toyota Land Cruiser, which it's largely based on, at least the Lexus steps it up, gives you that 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6, made it up to a 10-speed automatic transmission, all built on a truck-type platform. Means it's rugged, robust, and built to go off-road. It's none of that unibody crap, but I caution, because even for me, I'm waiting. I'm not buying one of these just yet, because that new V35A, that 3.4-liter V6, we know are part of a massive recall over 100,000 vehicles, including the Lexus LX600, the GX550, and the Toyota Tundra. That engine has seen a lot of issues, a lot of controversy around particulate that may or may not have been left in the engines, have circulated around and wiped out bearings. Now, a lot of these engines are problems, and other people that haven't had the issue love them and have had zero problems. There's a little bit of a reluctance in buying these GX models right now, as a lot of people are hearing about these major engine problems. But many other people just say, enough is enough, don't care, Toyota will take care of me. And if you're not one of those vehicle owners that has one of the problem engines, you're likely going to enjoy these vehicles thoroughly because they drive wonderfully. I love the way they drive. I got behind the wheel twice with these vehicles. The first time I was blown away by the over ruggedness feel of these vehicles, and the second time I really settled in and really absorbed the ambiance and the technology built in these vehicles. Their quality, they feel nice, and honestly a nice step up from even the 4Runner, which does feel a little bit excess plasticky. Consumer Reports ranks the GX550 at about a 75 to 80. RepairPal says it gets about a 4 out of 5, but that's largely because the outgoing, the GX460s, the 470s, the ones that actually had engines that would go 400,000 or 500,000 miles, that's a big reason why RepairPal has such high stats. Time will tell on this new 550, but because people are finding these vehicles so agreeable, the depreciation in 5 years is expected only to be in that 30 to 35%. So again, just like the NX, expect to only lose maybe a third of the value of one of these vehicles after 5 years. That being said, there's a few issues: suspension wear, fuel economy complaints. I mean, it's a heavier truck type vehicle with a turbo V6. It's going to consume some gas. And some of the early turbo cooling issues that have crept in there. We also can't forget to remind you of some of the intercooler problems that we've heard, as well as, of course, the V35A, which sadly has been a bit of a problem. Keep your head above water. Check the recalls on NHTSA before you buy any of these and understand where that batch of recalls and VIN numbers are and whether that vehicle is one that you want to buy. But they rank well, they're reliable outside of that engine issue that may or may not creep in, and they're absolutely legendary. Before we get to the last model and probably the most reliable vehicle in the luxury SUV segment, I want to share some common rules of thumb. Don't ever buy the first major overhaul change of that particular model. New engine, new chassis, new designs. Let the OEMs deal with the bugs first. Skip it. Go into the third year of that change and then you're probably good to go. Also, if it's a V8 by a lot of these luxury brands like Audis, BMWs, while they're going to be the best driving experience, they're also going to be the most costly to service and probably the least reliable of the bunch. So if you're looking for durability and that great purchase, maybe skip on the V8s. Skip with the EV platforms. Reliability-wise, especially in the luxury car segment, are not necessarily top shelf for reliability. There are lots of glitches. Just ask Audi and the e-tron how that's working out. If you're looking at a hybrid, stick with the mild hybrids. If you go with the plug-in hybrids, you're likely going to be welcome to larger batteries, bigger motors, and most importantly, more complex technology backing all of that means you're probably going to have a few more issues down the way. But the last model that I want to share with you absolutely is wonderfully reliable. The best, most reliable SUV in the luxury segment in 2026 is the Lexus RX 350h, which offers up that naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder through the ECPP system, or of course, possibly go with that new 2.4-liter Turbo 4 in the 350, and you're welcome to a great host of reliable driving miles. And the expected outcome for these vehicles is 250 to 300,000 miles. They only lose 35 to 40% on depreciation in 5 years. RepairPal says they're good for about 4.5 out of 5 star for reliability, and Consumer Reports ranks them between 80 to 85% absolutely legendary for durability, hence why some of the smartest, most savvy shoppers are buying these vehicles. A few little issues, electronics, infotainment problems, and the few glitches here that might need a reset. Of course, small brakes and fragile suspension parts might mean a little bit more attention to maintaining those ball joints and some of the bottom end parts, or possibly prematurely changing out some brakes. Those are really the weaknesses of these vehicles. Now, my personal favorite is back in 2020-21 with the Lexus RX 350, when you could actually get still that naturally aspirated 3.5, which gave you a dual port as well as direct fuel injection, meant there was no carbon fouling, no walnut blasting, just a reliable drivetrain. Sadly, that's gone away. You can really only find that engine now in the new IS 350, but maybe you're just tired of some of these brand new vehicles. You want something used. After listening to this list, why are used BMWs so cheap? As well as why are used Jaguars so cheap? Well, we know a lot of the rebrand, but guess what? You might be shocked. There's more to that picture. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. You all have a lovely day. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.